This is a public meeting starting on Monday, February 23rd at 10 o'clock, Howe Island Chambers. And I'm calling the meeting to order. Everybody, please have your phone on silence or mute. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as the gathering place of the first peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the Township of Frontenac Islands is committed to working with indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, the purpose of this meeting is to receive a planning report application on zoning bylaw amendment to allow for construction of a 1.5 story marine facility boathouse with a height of 7.3 meters, 24 feet prior to the construction of the principal residence use. And we have Dimitri from the planning office. Listen to his instructions, and that's because this is a planning meeting. That's why it's a public meeting, not a council meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dimitri. I am a senior planner with the County of Frontenac. And the reason I'm here from the county is because the county provides day-to-day planning services for the Township of Frontenac Islands. So we essentially provide all planning services to the township. So what my job is to look at the township's official plan, which is the broad policy statement of the of how development occurs in the township zoning bylaw, as well as all other types of provincial policies and regulations that exist when it comes to development, and then translate those and provide advice to members of the public, residents, citizens, council, and whoever has anybody that has any questions related to land use in this township. So we are the subject matter experts when it comes to the policy framework within this township and how development occurs within this township. Before I start, I need to read what's called the procedure and the procedure statement of public meetings that's required for me to read under the Planning Act. So this morning, council will be conducting one public meeting under the authority of the Planning Act. This item includes a zoning bylaw amendment for a property that is located to the west or beside 262 Spithead Road. The property is vacant. There's nothing on it right now. It does not have a municipal address. So personal information collected as a result of this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act, the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection and Privacy Act, the Planning Act, and all other relevant legislation, and will be used to assist in making a decision on these matters. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes that will be available to the public. Questions regarding the collection should be forwarded to the township clerk. Any person who wishes to receive a copy of the minutes of the public meeting, a copy of any planning report, a notice of council's decision on any of the application should indicate their full name, address, postal code, and other relevant contact information to the clerk prior to leaving the meeting. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Frontenac Islands before council makes a decision on the planning application, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Frontenac Islands to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Please note that only specified persons, as defined by the Planning Act, are permitted to appeal certain types of applications. The procedure for the public meeting will be as follows. The planner, being me, will explain the purpose of the public meeting and provide a brief overview of the application and summary of a summary of what's proposed. There is no planning recommendation being made at this meeting. This is only a public meeting to gather information and to hear from the public. A recommendation by the planning department, by our staff, will be made at a later date. The applicant will then be provided with an opportunity to provide any comments that they have about the application. The members of council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and the planner. The chair will then, the chair being the mayor, will then inquire if there are any members of the public who wish to make an oral written submission on the proposed application. And if so, you should announce your name and mailing address before you provide your comments. Also, please be aware that anyone who wishes to address the applications should direct their comments and questions through the chair or through the mayor. So I'm just going to share my my PowerPoint slides here, so just give me 1 second. I know the room is not an ideal setup for sharing the slides, but the slides are behind you here. So the purpose of this public meeting is to inform council, neighbors and members of the public of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. To collect feedback from this meeting, which will then be used and considered in the planning analysis prepared by staff, which will be done at a later date. The way that we've proposed this meeting is that no decision regarding this proposal will be made today. The way that planning staff have recommended it is that we are proposing to just run a public meeting and then take this to decision at another date. So the proposal is twofold. Number one, the applicant is asking to permit the construction of an accessory structure being a marine facility or a boathouse before a principal use or a dwelling or a house is constructed on the property. And number two is to permit a marine facility or of being a boathouse to be constructed to a height of 7.3 meters or 24 feet over 1.5 stories, whereas 1 story or 5 meters or 16.4 feet is permitted by the zoning bylaw. Now, I just want to make a note here. The initial notice that you had received in the mail stated that the building was going to be 2 stories at a height of 9.3 meters or 30.5 feet. After we started to receive public feedback, the applicant revised the height of that building to reduce it to 7.3 meters or 24 feet. So instead of the 30.5 feet of height, we're now considering a height of 24 feet. So in terms of background, the planning background, this property is designated by the official plan as rural or shoreland area. The zoning of this property is rural residential. The size of this property is 0.65 hectares or 1.6 acres. There's 46 meters or about 150 feet of frontage on Spithead Road. And the property has about 62 meters or 204 feet of frontage on the waterfront. As far as natural heritage features, there are, based on our mapping, there are no regulated natural heritage features on the property. There is no existing development on the property. The property is currently vacant. And the surrounding land uses include lots of similar size to the west and a larger developed lot to the east. And I just want to point out that the applicant that is proposing this zoning bylaw amendment owns the property adjacent to the east. So the property that we're discussing today shares a property line with the developed property that the applicant owns. This shows an image of the surrounding area. The subject property is outlined in red. To the right is 262 Spithead Road. That is the applicant's other property that's developed with a dwelling. And then to the west, you see other waterfront properties with residential development on it. So why is this being proposed? So it's my understanding that the applicants are boat collectors and they're proposing this boat house for personal use. There's no commercial operations that are proposed on this property. The boathouse is intended to be exclusively for their use, for the storage of their boats and accessory uses associated with the boats or accessory attachments to the boats, tarps and whatnot. The upper half story of the boathouse will contain a low ceiling and will be used for storage. So it's essentially a storage lot. Given the height of the ceiling, the way that when you measure from the floor up to the peak of the roof, given the height of that ceiling, it will be impossible to legally convert that dwelling to any form of habitable space. Just want to point out that under the building code, there's a minimum height that you need for ceiling in order for something to be considered legal habitable space. The upper story or the upper half story of this structure is not going to meet that minimum height. Therefore, it will never be possible to convert that to a dwelling unit. And there are no variance processes under the building code such that exist under the Planning Act. The boathouse is also not proposed to be connected to any type of servicing, so no well and no and no class of sewage system. So no septic system, no plumbing within the building. So there's no way that the building can be, can have servicing other than electricity, which is generally needed for lights and opening up doors and whatnot. Also point out that for all boathouses and any type of significant shoreline alteration work, such as dredging, in-water works, in-water vegetation removal, all of that is regulated by the Ministry of Natural Resources. A permit, there's two types of permits that one can obtain from MNR, and those permits depend on scale of the proposed development. Anything that the municipality approves in the form of building permit has to also obtain a permit from the Ministry of Natural Resources as well. So just to kind of set the stage in terms of what the boathouse is and how that relates to the zoning bylaw. So the proposed height of the boathouse is 7.3 meters or 24 feet. What's permitted by the zoning bylaw is a maximum height of 5 meters or 16.4 feet, but that applies to all accessory structures across the entire township, whether it's a garage that's not on the water, any type of like storage shed, any type of accessory structure. The maximum height for any accessory structure is 5 meters. So there's no specific regulations that apply to boathouses insofar as height goes. The footprint of the proposed boathouse is 50 by 60 feet, which is about 3,000 square feet. The zoning bylaw permits, so as far as what the zoning bylaw permits for footprint, the maximum footprint for all accessory structures on a property is relative to the size of the lot. The zoning bylaw allows you to construct up to 8% of lot coverage for all of your accessory structures. And that doesn't mean the zoning bylaw does not restrict that you have to use it across 2 or 3 accessory structures. You could use all of that 8% lot coverage for one accessory structure. And for this lot, given the size of it, the maximum size of all accessory structures or one accessory structure is 5,648 square feet. So the footprint of this boathouse falls below what is permitted by the zoning bylaw. As far as stories go, the section of the zoning bylaw that states the height restriction of 5 meters. It also states that the all accessory structures must be 1 story in height. My interpretation is that what's being proposed here is 1.5 story because that there is going to be an upper loft, storage loft area that's proposed within the ceiling that's going to be used for storage. I interpret that to be as 1.5 stories. So those are the 2 areas, the height and the stories are the 2 areas where the boathouse does not comply with the zoning bylaw. As far as distance to adjacent properties or properties beside this property, the minimum permitted by the zoning bylaw, the minimum separation distance is 1 meter, whereas this application proposes a minimum separation of 5 meters. So that certainly exceeds the minimum setback requirements. So this shows a photo of the interior layout of the boathouse, and then as well as the what the boathouse will look like from the lake. So those three garage bays are what one would see from the water. This shows the back view as well as the side view, as well as shows the height of the roof being 23 and 23 inches, 10 feet. I just rounded over to 24 feet just to keep it more simple for discussion purposes. And I know what you're thinking, why are you measuring to the mid roof and not the peak of the roof? And the reason for that is because like whenever we do anything in development, for development applications, everything has to be tied back to a specific definition. And those definitions and those instructions for how we measure things, for how we apply different rules are all outlined within the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw tells us that for every structure, we have to measure the height based on the average height between the eaves and the ridge for a roof that is a gable roof, hip, or a gambrel roof. What those roofs are roofs that have they're triangular in shape. So if it's triangular in shape, you measure it to the midpoint of the roof. Why is this definition the way it is? I'm not sure, but this is the case in many townships. Some townships measure it to height to peak, but in this particular instance, all roofs and all building height within the township are measured in this way. So for a flat roof, it's the highest point. For a mansard roof, it's the deck roof line, and for a gable or a triangular roof, it's the average height between the top of the triangle and the eaves or the ridge of the roof. That's just the way that height is measured. So I just want to set some definitions as well, just for conversation purposes. So under the zoning bylaw, a story is defined as a portion of a building other than an attic, basement or cellar, including between any floor level and floor, ceiling or roof, or ceiling or roof. A half story is basically a portion of the building that is usable, but it's located within the roof itself, so like a loft, as long as that floor level is not lower than 1.2 meters. So that's why I've defined this as a 1/2 story. So what is a marine facility? Mentioning marine facility. A marine facility in the zoning bylaw is defined as an accessory building or structure which is used to place a boat into or take a boat out of a water. The definition includes boat launching ramps, boat lifts, docks, boathouses, but does not include any portion of a building that's used for human habitation, or any boat service, repair, or sales facility. So when we say marine facility, in this case, these are accessory to residential uses. So if it's a boat service, a repair, or any type of facility with a commercial element, they are considered as something different under the zoning bylaw. There's also another section in the zoning bylaw that speaks to specifically boathouses, pump houses, and docking facilities. And that section of the bylaw basically says a boathouse is permitted within any yard that abuts a water. So if you have a property that has a water body that touches it, you are permitted under the zoning bylaw as of right to construct a boathouse within the parameters of the zoning bylaw. So to give you a summary of the zoning provisions and how this proposal complies or does not comply. So in terms of when a boathouse is to be constructed on a property, the boathouse is permitted to be constructed as an accessory use to a principal use on all waterfront properties. The proposal in this case is looking to construct a boathouse on a vacant lot. So there is nothing for it to be accessory to. And they're proposing to construct it ahead of a principal use or ahead of the construction of a dwelling. This does not comply with the zoning bylaw, hence why a zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted. The proposed boathouse falls below the maximum permitted footprint as defined by the zoning bylaw. So the floor area or the footprint of the boathouse complies with the zoning bylaw. The boathouse exceeds the maximum height permissions for all accessory structures. Therefore, the height does not comply with the zoning bylaw. This is the second reason why an application has been made for a zoning bylaw amendment. And just want to reiterate that all structures on the shoreline and associating dredging or native in-water vegetation removal must also receive a work permit from the Ministry of Natural Resources before a building permit can be issued. The township does not actually regulate any type of earthworks or any type of site alteration on the shoreline or on the property. The township does not have a site alteration bylaw. So this presentation was put together on Friday, and we'll update it on Friday. And at that point, we had received 14 letters of objection from nearby residents. One of those letters was from the Spithead Estates Inc., which is an association with a mandate to service 37 members, who include most of the property owners within the Spithead Estate subdivision. According to that letter, 27 of those members have expressed their objection to this proposal. It's unclear how many members of that belong to that association also sent in individual letters. So I think I just wanted to point that out as well. Obviously, no letters supporting this. Summary of public comments. So everybody sent in very well written letters. There's lots of information that came out. So what I tried to do is summarize all the public comments so that we can essentially fit them in within this presentation. Council was also provided with your comments that were received up until Friday afternoon. in the agenda as well as on their desks for any comments that were not added to at the time of publishing the agenda. So some of these, the issues that have come up include the following. Obviously, the size and the height of the proposed boathouse, specifically that the boathouse will be the largest visible building on land and water, that on this side of on the island, and it will be easily seen from the county ferry. The proximity to the adjacent property to the west, concerns regarding future use of the property, commercial and quasi-commercial purposes, concerns regarding this property being used for short-term rental, concerns with future residential uses on the subject lot being impacted by the proposal. Specifically, the question was, is this going to sterilize the property and not allow for this property to be used for residential purposes in the future? Concerns associated with the outdoor storage of boat trailers and other equipment on an otherwise vacant lot. Concerns that the proposed structure does not conform to the established character of other properties on Spithead Road. Concerns regarding general enjoyment of individual properties. Environmental impact associated with the development and construction and the dredging required for this boathouse. That the building will encroach onto Crown land, which will require approval from provincial and federal authorities. The potential for negative impact on property values. The fact that this application may set a precedent for other similar zoning bylaw amendment applications in the township. And a general sentiment that property owners purchased this lot knowing its limitations and are now trying to circumvent the zoning provisions. As part of the public comment consultation period, we do a technical circulation, and that technical circulation goes out to technical agencies that are responsible for either issuing permits or providing the township with comments on various issues. So we did receive comments from the Cataract Bay Region Conservation Authority. I want to make it clear that the CRCA are in a contract with the township to provide comments with respect to natural hazards. The CRCA does not have permit issuing authority on the island, so nobody needs to apply for a CRCA permit to conduct any work on the shoreline. Which means that the Ontario Regulation 4124, which basically outlines the things that you would need to apply to conservation authority for, doesn't apply. But that being said, the CRCA does provide the township with comments with respect to natural hazards for any property related to any property that touches the water, any property that has any type of natural hazard concern with it, whether it's floodplain, wave uprush, wetlands, slope stability, stuff like that. So what the CRCA said was they actually don't object to this in principle. Specifically, the use of a boathouse on the waterfront, they say is well, it's an appropriate use. A boathouse is to be used on the waterfront. The township zoning bylaw permits that. They don't object to that. They did mention a couple of flags. One thing is that the proposed application exceeds the maximum height requirement for any developments if they were to be considered under the CRCA permitting process. I think it's important to understand the intent of that height requirement restriction. It's not for visual impact or anything that has to do with how a boathouse slopes. The CRCA is primarily concerned with buildings being used for livable space within hazard areas. So the reason why they apply a maximum height to buildings along the water is so that it does not inadvertently get converted into a dwelling or livable space. It has nothing to do with visual impact or how the building looks or any type of environmental impact. As far as the total development, including the walkways around the boathouse, the CRCA states that it exceeds their maximum 15-meter lot coverage restriction that is within OREG 4124. However, again, because this does not necessarily apply to any application that's made under the building code, there are plenty of properties on both islands where waterfront development and waterfront occupation or development of occupation of development along the waterfront exceeds OREG 4124. So they're just kind of highlighting that, saying, hey, if this is processed under our permit process and under our regulation, this is where we would have concerns and discussions. The boathouse itself, if you don't consider the walkways around, meets the occupation limit of 15 meters. So it's not the boathouse that's the issue with that. It's more so the surrounding paving. So as required under the Planning Act, as part of the public meeting, staff have prepared a draft bylaw amendment and draft zoning bylaw amendment. And I'm displaying this bylaw amendment here on the slides, and it was attached to the public meeting circulation document. I just want to translate what is kind of being proposed here. Number one, that the boathouse is to be permitted to be constructed before a dwelling. That the height is permitted to be 7.3 meters, whereas 5 meters is permitted by the zoning bylaw. That the boathouse through zoning cannot connect to any well or class of septic system. And then that the boathouse cannot be used for human habitation or commercial purposes. So all the last two, in terms of not being able to connect to a well or septic system or be used for human habitation or commercial purposes, are something that because if it's written in the zoning bylaw, it's easily enforceable by the township. So that concludes my presentation. Staff will consider feedback from the public and return to council with a recommendation at a future date. Thank you.
Okay, and just going back to your first point. Is it time for the public to give their 2 cents before council?
I think at this point, the procedure generally requires the applicants to provide some commentary. However, it's up to the chair. If you have questions and you want to ask me, you can do that, but it's entirely up to you.
Okay, I think I'll go to the applicant first and hear what you would like to say.
Okay, thank you.
Step forward, say your name and your address, so that's part of the record.
My name is Greg King. I'm the agent for this application. I represent the owners. And my address is 6 Allier Road, Berrien Place, Ontario. So I'd like to thank Dimitri. He did a great presentation, describes the proposal very well and outlines the various issues. I'm here today to sort of expand on some of the things he said and just answer a few of the questions that have been raised through the public circulation and the agency circulation. So the marine facility boathouse will be utilized as part of the owner's residential property to the immediate east, and it's for personal use only. Proposed height will allow a peaked roof with a partial storage lot. The one of the concerns raised talked about the use of the property. So the subject lands there was a sufficient size and shape to support the proposed use, and also a future single detached residential dwelling to be constructed closer to the road. So this application does not change the intent of the zoning to allow for a single detached dwelling on the property, and that is proposed to be constructed, sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. The proposed marine facility has a similar footprint or smaller footprint than other existing boathouses on Howe Island. With regards to permitting the boathouse on a vacant lot, this proposal is unique and it does not set a precedent for most of, if not all of the other properties on Howe Island. More specifically, the applicants own 2 adjacent properties. One property contains a single detached dwelling and the other is proposed to contain a marine facility. So at the end of the day, both properties will be used as one entity, and you'll end up with one house that's existing and one proposed boathouse. This situation will disappear over time through the construction of a new house or the merging of the 2 properties. Basically, the intent here is once again to allow for both properties to be used together. The owner has reviewed and the comments submitted by the CRCA and the public and has made the following changes. Decrease the building by 2 meters in height. Remove the full second story. Design the building so it does not meet the Ontario Building Code requirements for habitable space. So it cannot be used for human habitation. And the owner is also proposing what's called a development agreement. So enter into a development agreement with the municipality. And this would provide further protection to the municipality and just reassure the owners, so the adjacent owners, the neighbors, in the municipality that, what the intent of this, application is and what the permitted uses are. So, the owner's proposal has been submitted to the Ministry of Natural Resources to get their inputs and to determine what permits are required. So M&R has a couple of permits that would be required. Could be a work permit and or a land use permit. And they're looking at the drawings right now to determine exactly what permits are required, if any. And as part of this process, engineered drawings will be required by the Ontario to meet the Ontario Building Code requirements and also the M&R requirements for construction and natural hazard protection. The RRS3 zone is very specific. It contains strong wording on what is permitted and what is not permitted. And Dimitri did a good job explaining that and writing this up. So it does provide a lot of protection to the municipality as to what is permitted on the property, controlling the use on the property. I'd like to note that this is applicable to the current owners, and it would also be applicable to any future owners. And the zoning is enforceable by the municipality. So in addition to that, the owner is also proposing a development agreement. So it would mirror the language of the R-3 zone. It would add language to confirm that the marine facility will be used for personal use only by the neighboring property owner. So the same owners will be using the boathouse. Going back to my earlier description, as one entity. 2 properties, 1 house, 1 boathouse. The development agreement will be registered on title. Once again, would apply to all existing owners and current owners or future owners, and would stay in effect until a single detached dwelling is constructed on the current vacant lands with the boathouse proposed. And once again, it adds an extra layer of protection for the municipality. So that's my presentation, and I can answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions
No.
directly?
A great job, Mr. King. I don't think I need any questions from you. I'd wait to hear from the public and the rest of you.
Okay, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you again. A couple questions. Was your consultation with planning before this all came forward?
Yes, there was a pre-consultation meeting with Dimitri.
Yeah.
And we went through the zoning bylaw in detail and talked about potential issues and how to address those issues.
So I may just be jumping a step ahead here, but it would appear to me there's gonna be a lot of dredging required. Shoreline dredging out into the channel for whatever. So that's all gonna require M&R approval. So what's the next step? If this is approved, what's the next step in terms of timing and when will we see all that happen?
So what would happen is, I believe the owner is looking to begin construction this year. Once they get approval, but what they would be doing is going to an engineer. The engineer would create drawings to show exactly how the building is going to be constructed, how it's going to be protected from natural hazards, whether it's flooding, wave uprush, ice, and it'll be designed to address all those issues. It'll go to the Ministry of Natural Resources to get their approval. M&R will determine what permits are required, work permits or land use permits. And then it'll go through their process for approval.
So if I can remember, so I understand some of the concerns are, does this become a commercial operation? Right.
Correct.
So when I look at the drawing, it kind of looks like it's a drive-through. You have doors, garage doors on both sides. You know what I mean by like, yeah. So that kind of presents the opportunity. Oh, we can bring some stuff in, we can work on it, and there's a fine line between commercial business and a hobby kind of thing. So do we have some assurance from the applicant that this is for hobby use only?
Yeah, this is for personal use only, and that raises another good point I'd like to make is that when you have boats, you have equipment and trailers to go along with that. This boathouse will allow for all the boats, trailers, and equipment to be stored within the structure. So there will be no exterior storage on the property. And then once again, it is for personal use only. And just to clarify, the R zone is very specific. The R-3 zone would prohibit commercial uses on the property. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holt.
No, question. Very good presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jablonski.
Thank you. This one question maybe towards Dimitri.
And I think it's already mentioned, just want to clarify, there are other structures similar to this one being proposed within an area. Same size of boathouse, same size of configuration, bigger boathouses within that same area, are they not?
In terms of, so through the mayor, in terms of the same area, you're talking about in the subdivision area?
Exactly.
So is your question is, are there similar structures?
Yeah.
Yeah, so to the west, there is a boathouse of relatively similar size. I think it's, if you measure the roof line, I get 60 by 60. But if you, my understanding is that it's a 50 by 50, I think is just, so there is a boathouse, I can show it to you here on my slides. That actually kind of gives you a good idea of what the boathouse is gonna look like. As far as lot coverage goes, excuse the, don't wanna make anybody dizzy, so, there is this 292 Spithead Road here, has a boathouse, and when you measure it using this aerial, I get 60 by 60 feet. Again, that's roof line, the actual, walls are probably a little bit more narrower, so I understand it may be a 50 by 50, but if you're imagining like what's this boathouse going to look like, it's pretty much gonna be very, very similar to this boathouse, just copied and pasted on this property here.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you.
And so one more thing to add. Are there boathouses of similar size on Howe Island? The answer is yes, there are. There is also boathouses that are 2 stories in height on Howe Island, and I know of one instance in particular where previous council has approved a second story on a boathouse with a residential loft. I don't know how many years ago that was, but there's, as far as precedent goes, precedent for size and height already exists in the township.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I have a few questions on that. It's one thing to say, a house would be built 5 to 10 years down the road and that. Sometimes, there's been, I believe, 2 years for trailers to be on a vacant lot while they're constructing a house.
Don't quote me on that, Mayor, I'm not
Okay.
sure the exact.
Okay. And that, in other words, a shorter time frame than that instead of, pie in the sky down the road. And that because it is a separate lot, and as you point out, it's gonna be treated as one lot, but it's not being joined together.
Right, it'll be legally, it'll be one entity based on the development agreement. Agreement would be very specific on who can use the boathouse and how the 2 properties are tied together. Because of the time frame for potential construction of a single detached dwelling, we have to go through the zoning bylaw amendment to permit the use prior to the construction of the single detached dwelling. So if it was a shorter time frame, then they could apply for building permits and start the process, or they could go through possibly different planning application. In this case, the development agreement protects the municipality, and it allows for the boathouse to come first without any building permit being applied for a single detached dwelling.
And there was another point in the CRCA recommendation and that was to have no greater than 15 meters in width.
That's a good point. So the footprint of this structure is 15 meters. Because of the design, and if you look at, Dimitri, if you call it that neighboring property.
Yeah, one sec, sorry.
But you can't see from the road. 15 meters footprint in the water.
So basically what happens is when you design the marine facility boathouse, to allow for exterior access to the docks that extend out into the water, you end up creating a walkway around the boathouse. So what it does is it creates larger than 15, so basically another 10 feet of walkway to allow you to access the docks from the exterior of the building. And that is something that's exists on Howe Island now. So you have a 15-meter footprint, and then the additional 10 feet or more for the walkways. So it's an established practice and an accepted practice.
So Madam Mayor, just to kind of clarify on the drawing I'm displaying on the screen here. So this red line here is the edge of the boathouse, and to the left of that is the walkway. So the boathouse itself, so from red to red, is 15 meters, so it does meet that CRCA permitted shoreline occupation. And then you have that walkway that kind of extends outside of that exterior wall, and that walkway will then provide access to the dock on the water side of the houses.
Okay, the other question I have, and maybe you would know it, Dimitri. It is within the 100-year floodplain limit. How much lower is it than what it really should be?
So to answer that question is, I don't know how much lower it is, but the boathouses in their nature, because they're on the waterfront, are all located within the 1 to 100-year flood limit. And the reason why engineering drawings and engineering design is required for these types of facilities and these uses is so that when there is a flood, that they're properly constructed so that they don't get picked up and taken away. So the answer is that all boathouses are within the floodplain only.
Okay, but on that same lot, how much of that lot is within the floodplain and wave upshot for potentially a house being built? I know there's been flooding down that road not far from that area before. So is it going to be problematic if there's a house built on that lot after?
The boathouse itself will not have an impact on the developable area of the house, and it won't have an impact on whether the floodplain moves up or down.
Right,
So,
the house is what I'm saying of that lot.
mhm.
Is that entire lot under the floodplain?
I don't know the answer to that question, but the zoning bylaw states that if you are within the 1 to 100-year flood limit, as long as your house is the openings to your house is above a certain elevation, then you are able to construct 76.9. Thanks, Marcel. You're able to construct a dwelling on that. There's lots of properties on both Howe and Wolf Island that are within the 100-year flood limit. And when new development are proposed on lots that already exist within that area, the mitigation is engineering and openings to make sure that water doesn't go into the house when there is a flood.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with some in that regards, and doesn't apply to the road actually getting into your house. You have to take a boat to get to your house.
It's an issue with these older subdivisions that were created in the past.
Exactly, and that's why there's been an improvement along that line.
If I could,
Yeah.
Chair, so the property is an existing lot of record. It does have status. It's currently zoned rural residential, so it permits a single detached dwelling as a permitted use today. So it does have status and would be eligible for a building permit today, based on that zoning, based on its status as a legally available property.
So would you be amenable to, in this development agreement, to have a time frame on when the building is actually going to be built?
I think the development agreement replaces that. So the development agreement just basically says that you have a property that's two properties that are adjacent to each other. Once again, you have a house on one property, you have a boathouse on the other. They're one entity. Development agreement is not to speak to the construction of a future dwelling. That's up to the owners to determine based on their family requirements and personal needs. The development agreement is more to replace that and to say, basically, the two properties have to work together as one entity, and the development agreement would come off the table. It would be removed as would not be registered on title after the single detached dwelling is constructed. So basically, development agreement is in place until such time as a residential dwelling is constructed. It wouldn't speak to proposed timing for a future house. It's in place of it.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, so Greg, if I think one of the issues that come up is there's nothing that really stops the property owner from selling that vacant lot once the boathouse is built. Would that development agreement work to either prevent a sale? Like, how would that work?
Yeah, so the development agreement would speak to the property being used as one entity. So in order to sell the property, future owner would have to go through the process of getting drawings created. and then apply for building permits. And then once the building permit is approved, I would say that that would be the test or the condition to remove the development agreement. So property gets sold, the house gets constructed, now it's its own separate entity, and then the development agreement disappears, and you have two properties side by side again that are not joined at all in terms of use or as one entity.
So my understanding is that the development agreement will require future purchasers of the property that has the boathouse on it to apply for a building permit before they can close the sale.
Okay, anything else?
That's correct, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Just,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, so what you're trying to say, they're gonna bring them together, they're not gonna leave them at separate lots?
So that's a good question. So they're not gonna legally merge on title.
Yeah,
What the development agreement does is allow the two properties to be separately conveyable properties. But it puts a condition on that they're being used as one entity. So to avoid merging the two together as one property, leaving them as two separate properties, the development agreement bridges that gap.
Yeah.
And it allows for the house and the boathouse and that both those properties be used as one entity.
Mhm.
The intent down the road is to construct a single detached dwelling on the vacant lots with the boathouse. And then the development agreement will disappear and it's just one separate entity. So you have
the boathouse will be with the new house.
with the new house, exactly.
Correct, that's what I was looking for.
The development agreement is just the way to bridge that gap until that happens, whether it's with the current owners or future owners.
Yeah, because if they wanted to sell the house that they're in now, they could sell that at a later date. Like after they build their new house, say, oh, I don't want this house no more, we could sell that. house.
Right, and
Which is fine.
if it goes to retirement, you want downsizing, then maybe there's
They got kids, I don't know. it's
exactly, yeah,
their
there's
business.
different scenarios, but
Yeah.
they'll decide,
Yeah.
in the next few years what they want to do. So this allows the boathouse to occur now without impacting the municipality or the neighbors.
I do have lots more questions, but
Oh,
I think we should speak to the,
well, depends on who you want the answer from, that because this is the time for the gentleman that's doing the agent piece. And then Dimitri is gonna remain, I believe, as a resource for us. Okay, I have one question along that line of what he's speaking about, the development agreement. So there's nothing been submitted to planning, even in a draft scenario from them for what is the proposed development agreement, right?
That's correct. We haven't received a draft development agreement, but I will say that it's fairly standard for us to, for any application, for us to continue negotiations as public consultation continues to see if there are ways to mitigate issues that have come up through various instruments or tools at the applicant's disposal as they're as allowed by the Planning Act.
so again, I think they tried to address all the issues except for there's not gonna be a house on the lot. They reduced the size of the lot, the size of the building. The buildings is, I think, even footprint smaller than the next door neighbors and 4 doors up and across the other side. There's 4 other big giant boathouses. There's one on the way up to Spithead and there's several other on the island.
Is there a question on this? Is there? a
Well,
question?
I'm just making a point that,
Okay.
you know, we're here gonna take, that's what I said, maybe we should take notes first from the people.
As a matter of fact, that's where we're heading to right now, is we hear comments from the public. Now, under the Planning Act, it's 120 feet or 120 meters either side, not of the property.
So the public notice requirement under the Planning Act is 120 meters buffered or measured from the property lines of the subject property. How do we determine that? We have a GIS system. That GIS system creates a buffer for us based on that property. And then we send out a public notice based on to the addresses that the township has on record. Where do those addresses come from? It comes from the MPAC or the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation database. So when it comes to any type of public circulation for any meeting, all those addresses are determined by the distance from the property lines, and the addresses are populated from data that we have from MPAC, and that MPAC data is updated quarterly.
So how many properties are actually within that 120 meters?
Oh, I think I can count the number of mailing addresses. I believe there is about I actually don't want to answer. I can count them for you if you want me to do that.
Okay, I'm just curious now, because as you pointed out, for any further complaints coming in, only people within that area get the ability to be heard, is that correct?
Not necessarily. Public meetings are open to everybody in the township.
But in any future appeal, I just want to make sure, so, because there can be lots of people that live miles away that have wonderful opinions. They aren't given the same weight as somebody that lives next door.
I think I wouldn't say that. It's not necessarily the proximity of people to, or the proximity of neighbors to the subject property. It's more so what planning related issues are being raised, and how does that relate back to the township's official plan policy and the township zoning bylaw. So what planning staff do is we look at the specific issue. We don't weigh issue based on proximity to the property.
Okay, but there's been no letters of support and lots in opposition, so I just want to get that in weight. Okay, so we'll have one at a time. Anybody that would like to step forward, you give your name and your address, and you have maximum of 5 minutes to make the case for comments. Okay, who's the first?
Question. My name is Jim Ellerton.
Okay, step forward here. There you go.
My name is Jim Ellerton. I live at 292 Spithead Road. I'm immediately east of the property. I own a vacant lot there, and then I have my residence there. I have the 50 by 50 boathouse. My question, I guess, to Dimitri, I'm still confused where the datum points are. Where do you start?
So
Is that at dock level? Or is it at, I'll go quotation marks, high water mark? Because when you talk to surveyors, there's no high water mark on the St. Lawrence River, there's no tides.
mhm.
But I know there's a big controversy about surveying companies at both on US and Canadian side about this.
Right.
So when you say the datum point, does it start at the water line or the height of the dock?
So I think, Madam Mayor, Marcel, when you measure height of boathouses, what do you use as the floor level? Are you using finished floor elevation, or are you using the height of the water?
The height of the water, in this case, half the boathouse is gonna be on the ground and the other half is gonna be on water.
Mhm.
The portion that's on the water is gonna be from the water to the roof line.
Right.
Portion that's on the ground is gonna be 5 meters from the ground to the middle of the roof line.
Okay, so the answer to that is the boathouse height is then based on in this situation. So it's based on both the land and the water level. So I'm assuming it's gonna be the lower of the two. So the boathouse, but this boathouse is gonna be half on the land, half on the water. So it would be weird to construct a boathouse where you use on the water, for example, the 100-year flood limit, which will raise it by like 2 meters, for example, right? And so the way that I see it is the boathouse is gonna be constructed so that you're measuring 23 feet from the land up, and then that's gonna transfer over to the height of the height over the water. Is that how you would do it?
That's a good assessment.
Okay,
So what land?
pardon me?
What land? Where the
So
water is now, it's low, or where the lot line is.
The land adjacent to the shoreline.
yeah, the land, the elevation of the land adjacent to the shoreline.
So when the water's low, that's where it is.
I think, I mean, like,
Highest point right now.
You understand what I'm
That's
talking
right.
about? Because a few years ago, my boathouse, when you mentioned that 50 by 50, the water was over the dock,
mhm, mhm.
almost, maybe 2 inches.
So I think, I
So
mean,
that's what I'm just, for my own sake, what is that datum?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a surveyor, I haven't gone out to measure what that data point is, but I think the question. My question back would be, what's the grade difference between the shoreline today versus the shoreline? If the water is at a high level, is like, I don't know what the grade is of what the grade difference is, but I'm assuming it's not gonna be a significant.
Well, it can be.
It can be, but based on the topographic data and the elevation data that we have, it does not look to be a significant difference between shoreline elevation and the adjacent land right beside the shoreline in when the data was collected in 2024.
I'm still confused.
Okay, fair enough. I can look into it some more, but I think yeah, I mean,
So we really don't know the height.
well, the height is always relative to the ground.
Relative to what?
The ground.
Around.
What
He's an
ground?
engineer, so he's.
What ground? That's what I'm concerning, the ground that's out in the water?
No.
No,
I
Shoreline.
I know I surveyed some lots and the surveyor told me to survey your lot in November when the water's low. Because when I survey it, you own that. Now that particular point is underwater,
Mhm.
and that was a legal survey.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
But when you talk to the health department,
the legal,
different.
yeah,
So everybody has a different opinion of where that mark is.
Greg.
If I could chime in here just for an architect, so. So I think the important point here is that whatever happens here has to be finally approved. If approved here, it has to go to the Ministry of Natural Resources. And they use data up to date as of the application, which will be if this is approved, if the application for building permit occurs in June of 2026. So Ministry of Natural Resources is using the most current data they have on flooding and other engineering requirements to make sure the house meets today's standards. So a boathouse was constructed years ago and was not constructed as standard. This one will be, and we'll have to meet Ministry of Natural Resources standards in order to get their boat permits or land use permits. And the engineers that are designing this will also take in the most recent information. So whatever happens, this boathouse will meet today's standards.
Okay, so my question goes back then to Marcel on that. Is this the cart before the horse in that? For issuing of permits?
Well, when he's gonna issue the permit, I'm gonna need that M&R permit. Or
Before
M&R
anything else
letter
happens.
saying if he needs a permit or not. For the high water mark, we take July.
Yeah.
We take July watermark for the high water mark. Okay? For the level of building, we go from the soil level. If it's inside the water, if it's the whole building's inside the water. Then we will use the waters, the level of the water is going to be the data we start from, okay?
But
If
you're
it's
saying,
on the ground, and the water will use the ground.
so you're saying the high water mark of July
The
versus the high
July,
water.
that's the July 15 watermark, that's
Yeah.
what we're gonna use.
Not the 100-year water mark.
Not the 100-year flood, because the 100-year flood could be a meter and a half higher than that July
Because of
one.
it, it's gonna be quicker.
Now, one thing I wanted to add is like when you go on the ground and you look at properties to determine what the I would say the average high water mark is, you can clearly see where the water exists most of the time.
The waveline.
Yeah, you can see the wave line. So that's generally the way that most of the time we determine where that water is. I mean, yes, water is gonna go in and out, but when you're on a shoreline, you can kind of see where that water line is because it does make it does color the shore in a specific way.
Yeah, part of my concern is related to the vegetation and everything else that has usually been there to hold the shoreline together.
Right.
And the wave action as well as high waters, that's what. And because we do have experience on these islands and that with significant flooding of places that probably never should have had the best approval. And that I just want to make sure we don't repeat any great mistakes.
I think one mitigating factor with shoreline development specifically for boathouses, is the fact that M&R issues building permits, or not building permits, but land use permits or work permits. And it is through their work that they determine whether or not the structure is going to have an impact on the integrity of the shoreline. So it is through that development review process that we would determine, or M&R would determine, whether or not specific engineering is required, specific type of shoreline work is required to make sure that that shoreline isn't impacted by the construction of this house or of this boathouse. Even if you are looking at, like, I've seen permits come in from M&R because they ask us to comment on them for dredging work for existing lots. And so you need a permit to dredge, you need a permit to remove native vegetation along the shoreline. It's that permitting process that mitigates those concerns.
Okay, and usually that's, the dredging is before April 1st or April 15th, not. And
I
then-
don't know the timing, yeah, it's too detailed.
Okay, so who else has a comment? Step forward, state your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, my name is Joni Mines. I live at 540 Spithead Road. And I'm speaking today on behalf of Spithead Estates, Inc. As Dimitri mentioned, Spithead Estates, Inc. is an association mandated to serve its members who are property owners around or in the Spithead subdivision. That presently includes 37 members, and I sent this notice of a public hearing to all of our members. I received notification as Spithead Estates, Inc. owns property in this subdivision, specifically a large 26-acre center field lot, which was the recipient of this notification, so it's within your notification boundaries. I received responses from 32 of our 37 members who are all vehemently opposed in opposition to this application. And the specific reasons were many. The first one is this is a repeatable precedent that we believe. So that to build a structure on a vacant lot without a primary residence could set a repeatable precedent. Currently, we have 9 lots in our Spithead Estate subdivision that could take advantage of this, could open up an opportunity for them. We are opposed to this. We have issues, obviously, with the height specifically of the building. Now, Dimitri talked about measuring from midpoint, from regular folks' point of view. This originally was a 2-story proposal at 38 feet tall to the peak, to the ground level, whatever that ground level is. Now that is reduced to 1.5 story, and it's 31 feet high to the peak from the ground level. That is an enormous structure that can be viewed from the road. It can be viewed from the St. Lawrence River, the Bateau Channel, and anyone coming on the county ferry could see it. That half story, that reduction to 1.5 story becomes a little bit meaningless when you're talking about a structure that's 279 square feet wide. It certainly applies when you're talking about a tall, narrow structure, but when you're talking about one with a 3,000 square foot footprint and dormer windows on the side, it starts to lose the value of the reduction in height. The third issue that we have is with the width and the depth of this boathouse. So from a depth perspective, it's 60 feet deep, 30 feet in the water. From a width perspective, as was said, it's 50 feet wide. It also has docks on both sides of it, adding 6 feet. Now, it's my understanding when I read the Cataract Way Authority that when they measure it, it's actually not within their stated goals because they include both the building and the dock. So in fact, this is 62 feet, not 50, and that's in their recommendation letter that they wrote. So it is certainly oversized from that perspective. Also, from a size, from a width and depth perspective, this goes out into the water. The dock on the left-hand side from the road going out is 110 feet long, 80 feet of which is into the water. In addition, there's another leg that goes across the right-hand side, and that is about roughly 40 feet. So we're going out into the water 80 feet and across about 40 feet, creating quite a nice inner harbor for this marine facility. They have a marine launch on another side, excuse me, on the right-hand side of it as well. This is an enormous structure. Jim's 50 by 50 boathouse is tucked away and not particular, it's not certainly it's not really visible from the road, and certainly isn't really a visual distraction for boaters or anyone else who are using the waterway. Now, the community has a lot of concerns about this. The impact, the negative impact on what is a quiet, residential, peaceful community. To have a boathouse of this magnitude and size and presence in our neighborhood seems to be counter to what our residents are looking for. We believe as
You're gonna have
well.
to wrap up within about 30 minutes. 30
We
seconds.
believe as well, there could be this encroachment on Crown land, and so we think that we'll be happy with the provincial permitting procedures. We have environmental concerns about the amount of dredging and
Okay.
removal of natural soils, and we have concerns about the future use
Okay,
as well.
thank you very much. Hey. Any questions from council on this? Councillor Hall, remain for a second, Councillor Hall.
I just have a question of what Spithead. I probably should know this, but was there a plan of subdivision when
Yeah.
Spithead was developed?
Yes,
So there's a subdivision plan?
yes,
To
there
it?
is.
So my understanding is that the Spithead Road, Spithead Estate subdivision was originally a subdivision. But based on research that I did months ago on another matter, it's my understanding that that subdivision was either dissolved or there's no agreement in place. It's a very, very old plan of subdivision.
Well, if I could comment or specifically if,
Yes, actually, that's the question.
Speaking, can I answer that?
Well, you have
George-
she has the floor right now, so let's see.
Okay, well, correct me if I'm wrong. There was a 1947 subdivision originally
Yeah,
created.
wait a second. Who are you?
That's
And,
right. My name is, okay, but I'm probably gonna speak later, so I'm just.
okay, then maybe you can
My name
speak
is Gordon
later.
Jackson. I live in 5.
Yeah. Okay, let's get the response from the lady that has the floor right now, and you can be the next person up.
I'm so comfortable if he's going to answer the question
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, he can answer it later.
yeah, he
Okay,
can answer that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay,
I might get it wrong.
okay,
I know we've had, I'll just say, we have had an association of property owners for 50, actually, this is our 51st year of
Okay.
having a property owners association in what we can, within Spithead Estates Inc.
okay, thank you. I have a question for Marcel on that. Thinking you probably would know if we had something like this in place.
We never found a subdivision agreement.
Oh,
Okay,
we can do it.
thank you very much.
Well, we would love.
Yeah, we would love to see that agreement if you could.
We would love to have it.
Okay, so no more questions for Joni?
That's good,
Correct?
thank you.
Okay, next.
You know, you're talking about. Yes.
Just a quick question. You're neutral, right? And this
Yeah,
presentation.
no extra discussion.
Can I answer that?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm neutral. My job as a land use planner is to provide objective advice to council with respect to what the official plan says, what the zoning bylaw says. And I provide advice to landowners that are applying for permits. I provide advice to residents for how to interpret rules for as to the best of my ability, but I don't represent the owners. I work for the township, but I also provide, like, my job is to provide objective advice in the context of land use rules as I know them.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, my name is Gord Jackson. I live at 540 Spithead Road. Getting Joey ran out of time. There was actually more comments from the members. In response to the question, there was a 1947 subdivision long ago. That was the epitome of rural planning. And over the years, that subdivision was maintained until a fellow named Dr. Gent discovered the subdivision existed and could be purchased. So he bought the whole thing. And then he began to his initial concept actually was to have a community of doctors, and we got halfway there. But that then became that developed into the Spithead States Incorporated, and which continues to own certain properties like the common properties, which we kind of manage as part of the association. But yes, it is a subdivision. If you've lost the paperwork, that's not my problem. It's there. The subdivision exists on pictures that we have. Whether there's a bigger subdivision, I don't know. So anyway, so the association was formed in the 70s, and as Johnny says, 51 years of interesting engagement in the community, where we sort out all sorts of things, and where we have a lot of parties and functions, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the history of it. Okay, and I'll tell you, one of the joys of living where we live is the Spithead Association, because we know all of our neighbors. Sometimes it takes a little while for someone to, discover that they're actually living in the subdivision and join the association, and this is the case at the moment. But usually people come in and join the party, if you like. Okay, that's first question. The next question. Half stories. They're an artifact of narrow structures, where in fact you have a bottom floor and then a roof like that. But the house, that structure house is only like 20 feet wide. I lived in a house like this, by the way. So, and what happens is the slope of the roof constrains the floor area. So people call it a half structure. But how high is it? It's still 2 stories high. And if you believe the diagrams, and they seem to be shifting, that area is 16 feet. But what you have is a floor plate of 3,000 feet and a height of 16 feet. And it may not be designed for habitation. In the 80 years that this building will exist, it will have different owners, and it will be, and it has excellent views of the Bateau Channel. It will be a habitation. It will be serviced. It will be serviced informally as other structures are. So, okay, that's not really what I wanted to say. I wanted to say, starting with the point that this is an 80-year building. And there's a lot of discussion back and forth. The diagrams have been very useful, but really you're not being asked to approve a diagram. You're asking to approve an amendment that says an accessory use can be developed as a boathouse in this case, before a primary residential use. That's the first thing you're being asked to do. The second thing you're being asked to do is approve a boathouse on this lot that is, by most people's measurement standards, 30 feet high. I think it's clear to me that one of the things that makes this a repeatable precedent, as Joni says, is that very few places would ever allow something like this. And that means that you kind of get to corner the market. Your vacant lots become, the place where you can get us a new zone and build a subject and build a 2-story boathouse. I myself have a vacant lot, and although I would never build a 2-story boathouse, my executors, and that's not going to be too far down the road, may say we can actually make this a more marketable property by simply changing the zoning bylaw. Now, I accept that the current owners have a pure heart, and what they really want to do is store a lot of boats on this, in this structure. And I think that may last for some years, but it's not gonna last forever.
30 seconds.
Okay, so you're being asked to approve, number one, an accessory use, let's say, accessory use before the primary use, and a structure that is completely out of scale of the neighborhood. And I think that that's a dangerous precedent. I think for sure it will be a short-term rental, because the boathouse across the way from us is exactly that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? That forward?
My name is George Thompson. I live at 404 Spithead Road. And I can be very brief, and it's repeating ground a little bit. I want to say that first, we appreciate the problem the applicants have. The problem they inherited when they bought the property. And when I think they would have been well aware of, it was not with a waterfront that they could develop in the way they wanted to develop. So now they brought this application up. All we are asking, and we are not opposed to them building a boathouse. We're only asking you to apply the existing bylaw and the policies that this council, I believe, believes in and has been applying, and hold them to a one-story boathouse, which is what Jim's house, the boathouse is next door. It's a big footprint, but it's a one-story boathouse. Hold them to that. I've heard no compelling reason why they can't build a boathouse that's one story tall, which the bylaw expects. I see no reason why they can't comply with the existing bylaw. And I think you do need to acknowledge that they are setting a precedent by wanting to put a boathouse on a property with no residential component, which is also against your policies. I appreciate they're proposing a development agreement, which creates no obligation on them to ever build a house on that property, ever. And there is no reason for you not to say to them, do what we expect of that lot. Build your house, put a boathouse on when you build your house. Don't tell us that one day I'll build a house and get my boathouse now, and then later I'll build a house. So for me, we're only asking you to apply existing policies, and there's no substantial reason, particularly in this subdivision, this residential environment, to deviate from the policies that this council has inherited and is applying.
Thank you. Now it's oh, you had a question for him?
I
Okay.
do. So George, I did have one question for you. I'm not ask for it, but I focused on something. So this existing property, is it part of the Spithead Association?
It is within that overall subdivision. And all people who buy within that subdivision are entitled to join our association.
Okay, so geographically, it is located in that.
Yes.
There's no defining boundary, of more of a understanding, is it?
Yeah, we've always worked with the subdivision that we all bought under.
If I could, so one of the concerns I heard was disruption to the neighborhood. It would appear, looking at the diagram here, that the entranceway to this property will allow residents, or sorry, anyway, traffic to exit directly to the east. They won't have to drive around the loop, if I'm looking at that correctly, right? So it should have minimum traffic impact on.
I think that's right. I think it's.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to turn around.
To go right.
Oh, I was so fine. Go down to, I was.
Because looking at the diagram, it looks, again, depending on where the
Okay.
entranceway is, it would look like.
Anyway, I'm not sure.
Okay, I actually happened to have driven down that way today just to scope it out. And if I were driving out that driveway, I could make a left-hand turn. And then you don't have to go right track.
You could, but it's illegal.
Oh, it's illegal. Okay, well, there, I didn't see a one-way arrow.
There was
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm happy to do more one-way arrows.
It's two.
Anyway.
Two ways.
It is two-way, yeah.
Good.
If I drove You're there, this is, it looked pretty legal to me in that, when I drove it. Okay, you'd like to come up next?
Good point.
I challenge whoever's taking minutes. My name is Andrew Fashetensky.
You might want to spell that for court.
I've got it on the record.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, maybe.
and
I
where do
live
you
at
live?
432 Spithead Road.
Okay.
I have one question, and I posed this already to Dimitri, which is my belief that as this is a federally regulated waterway, they need a Transport Canada water lot license to build on it.
Madam Mayor, I don't know the answer to that question, but what I can say is that, whenever zoning is, if there's zoning changes, if there's a building permit that's applied for, the township processes have no impact on federal or provincial regulations. So if they do need some kind of license, or they need some kind of permit from the province or the feds, that is typically done as part of the building permit process. It's not something that we would necessarily consider in planning, because we have no impact on those types of processes in any case. So the answer to that question is, perhaps the permit from those agencies or other agencies may be required, but whatever the township does has no influence on their permitting process.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of this gentleman from the council? Nope, okay, next.
Yes.
So try to get to you, but everyone kept sticking their hand up quicker.
Can I do it from here?
Sure.
Well, we want to catch you by the owl. We want to catch you by the owl.
Alright.
That's why. We want to catch you that side.
I don't have it.
We've got the spooky owl here.
Look at this. Mine's very brief.
Okay,
My name is Joe DeMora. I live at 488 Spithead Road. Part of the concern has to do with precedent, and that's already been addressed. I'm a bit interested in the development agreement yet to be seen. I'm wondering what sort of penalties exist within that framework. Well, let's say, for example, that house never gets built, and there you have a standalone facility on a vacant lot, not attached, and it sets the precedent for everybody else. You have a double precedent if nothing ever happens on it, and you don't take any action as a result of it. So I'm really interested in this precedent business, and I'm particularly interested in what you would anticipate might be any kind of penalty. Or what do you do when you get somebody to tear the boathouse down? Do you say naughty, you shouldn't do it? I mean, 10 years is a long time to be sitting on a vacant lot. It could change hands once or twice. If there's no penalty attached to the development agreement, what's the point of having a development agreement? So what is the penalty going to be?
Madam Mayor, I can't answer that question because I haven't seen
Yeah,
it, but what we're gonna do, so just bear with me for a sec. Whenever new development agreements are proposed, those are vetted by the township's legal team. It's the township's legal team that will advise us on whether or not, first of all, this agreement is enforceable, if this agreement is practical, and the township's legal team will then advise on if there are securities or other measures that would typically be required to make sure this agreement is that it has some teeth.
And that agreement is going to be structured and approved before the bylaw amendment, right?
The agreement would have to be considered as part of the zoning bylaw amendment approval process. So we would we would need to bring the agreement to council. And council would need to think about, discuss the agreement before they can make a decision on the zoning amendment.
Okay, I'm gonna think. We'll be interested in seeing that.
is there anybody else in the public? Is there anybody online? I don't see anybody with hands up online.
They're just giving one moment, Amy, just.
Okay, we'll give everybody one moment and that's online.
Actually, I just have a quick one.
Okay, step forward and give us your
My
name.
name is Beth Cotton and I live at 608 Spithead. And I was just wondering what the intention was of the bylaw that was originally created, not to have any structure built on a lot without a permanent dwelling there.
So, Madam Mayor, I think it's a good question. It's the zoning bylaw, the restriction for having accessory use or having principal structures before accessory uses is not something that's unique to the Spithead Road subdivision. It is a bylaw that's applied across the entire township. There are one can only guess as to what the intent of that is. I suspect that the reason why these types of provisions exist is that, so I'll give you a hypothetical. So say, for example, you have a new subdivision that gets built and there's lots of new vacant properties in an area. You'd want to prevent a lot of accessory structures from being built in that area, so that it doesn't end up being used for like a quasi commercial storage type of area. I have seen instances where in this municipality and other municipalities where that specific regulation has been modified with a timing component or a development agreement component, just with the understanding that the intent of this property in particular is for a specific use. In this case, it's a residential use, and that residential use is not being sterilized by the proposal, and that the intent of the property is maintained despite the fact that a boathouse is proposed to be constructed before a dwelling is constructed. I think it's important to remember that, boathouses in their nature are things that are constructed on the property line. One other hypothetical on the shoreline, one other hypothetical I wanna, propose, and it's not in defense of the application, it's just, I think for the sake of argument, is that, somebody can buy a property and build a house on that property and then build a boathouse. But then they don't have to live in the house. They don't have to even attend that house. They don't have to finish that house. And that would comply with the zoning bylaw, but effectively the use of that property would still more or less be the same, even though they got building permits for it. So I do want to say that there are many hypotheticals that exist when it comes to the timing or the sequencing of development construction, but the reason why these rules exist is because you set aside land to be used for a particular purpose, and you don't want that purpose to be erased because there are other accessory structures that are being constructed on that property.
Thank you, Dimitri, for answering that, but just with some reality to it, I live beside a spare lot. And it's beautiful, and it adds to the environment that we love so much on this island. 2 lots away, I have another spare lot. So for my husband and I to think that one day boathouses can pop up, somebody buys them because a precedent has been set because a house is coming down the road, I don't want that. And I think there are a lot of people in our beautiful little community that don't want that. And I'm sure on Howe Island, Amherst, everywhere else, they don't want that either. That's what makes this place so special.
All right, thank you. I think it's a fair comment.
Okay,
So I would just point out that the
come forward and state your name. This is for the public record.
Yeah.
Public meeting.
Andrew, you're at Bashtinsky, 432 Spithead Road. I'd just like to point out that the idea of ancillary buildings having to be built after a residence is for washroom facilities. Right? We don't all want people using vacant lots as a public facility. Right? The idea that you have to have somewhere that has a toilet and running water is really important. It's a public health issue, and I'm actually a little surprised that you're not mentioning that.
Madam Mayor, I think that's a fair point. I think it's important to also understand the context of this particular application in terms of the property owners owning property next door. So
But if you split it.
No, I agree. I don't argue that whatsoever. I'm just saying, yeah, I think that's a fair point. There's probably, I'll be honest with you, there's probably a lot of other reasons why the sequencing thing is put in place in many zoning bylaws, but I do know there are municipalities out there that do permit storage only facilities on a property without servicing as well. So
Just not under our bylaw.
It's just not under your bylaw, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so I think Sonia?
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for the benefit of the members of the public, my name is Sonia Bolton. I'm the manager of community planning for the county of Frontenac, so part of Dimitri's team that offers the planning services. For one,
Come closer.
I'm gonna be really quick.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would add to everything that has been said is that historically, the reason the primary and accessory uses have been laid out so that the principal or primary use has to go first in zoning bylaw also has a link to taxation, right? So generally, it's the principal use of the property that sets the tax assessment for the property, which in turn also attaches to how much taxes are collected by the municipality. That's not to say taxation is not a land use reason for doing something or changing something different from the zoning bylaw. But if we're talking about why historically this has been part of that issue, there is a taxation component that goes onto that. Taxation is not necessarily something that we deal with from a land use perspective and will come into play in terms of our professional recommendation. But again, just in terms of the broader picture, I wanted to mention taxation because that is, there is a historic lens with zoning for that reason.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I capture your point, if we have a primary residence and then we have a big beautiful boathouse at the tail end of it, it's very highly taxed. And that versus a boathouse on its own without a residence has a different
I
value
don't work for
altogether.
NPAC and
Okay.
I don't even do my own taxes. But that is the general consensus,
Yes.
is that the level of taxation is established by the principal use of the property.
Yeah, one thing I just want to be clear. Value of lot taxation is not something that land use analysis looks at.
That is correct.
Yeah, if there are lots of provisions in zoning bylaws, historic zoning bylaws, especially where political motivations have worked their way into regulations, and there's lots of those that exist in many municipalities. So I want to make it clear that if we're looking at taxation is not something that land use planning deals with.
But since
You
it's
will
been-
not see that in our fund.
No, but since it was brought up and that the concept of primary residence of 1,000 square feet being built there, and then all the connections, the servicing that would occur, et cetera, and then the boathouse, and that would solve this issue altogether.
The issue is they want to do something different.
Yeah.
And so they have to get permission to do that, and this is
Yeah.
the correct forum and
Okay.
mechanism to gain that permission.
That's fine. Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up and okay.
After they're done, I'd like to
Um,
make some more comments, please.
you'd like to make some more comments, okay? And that, because we'll have a more fulsome discussion at the next meeting of council, and that when we have a report back from planning, which I hope it would include even the proposal of any development piece. And we can have our discussion now though too. Okay, Councillor Ackley.
Well, so far, all I see is that everybody's complaining on how tall the building is, right? So-
Precedent.
Set the precedent, you know, well, if we're setting the
This
precedent.
is a discussion with this council,
Oh,
not with the.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we're setting a precedence where there is already 4 other boathouses probably in that height on the Spithead. There is,
Separately.
I'm making it crystal clear. This is a discussion among councillors right now, and I'll clear the room if it becomes disruptive, okay? So you address your comments to this council.
boathouses. There's a Gourlay one on the other side that's very tall. He has moved now, some other residents owns it. There's Dave Edmonston's that is super tall. It will be taller than this building alone. The footprint wise, Mr. Ellerton's there covers almost the same footprint as he's asking for. And he owned the adjacent land to it, and he owns the lot in between. He has sold him the lot in between, and now telling him that he doesn't like the size of his building that he's gonna put up there. So anyway, in perspective here, the only thing they're here for really is to ask us for an amendment to the bylaws to allow us to go ahead with a boathouse without having a house there. These, the Cartwrights, they do own a dwelling right beside this property, so at this point, they could join the 2 properties and then they wouldn't have to worry about anything if they really wanted to, but they don't wanna do that. Cause they do wanna build a future planned house from what I,
Actually, they would still have to look for an amendment because of the height.
true, that's, and we're looking for amendment on the height. And so far, they have dropped their height,
Did you say?
or they dropped their height. They did, sorry, we didn't, they did. They did.
Councillor Saunders, do you have anything to discuss?
I'm trying to understand the time frame again here, because we talked about a development agreement, we've talked about M&R requirements, stuff like that. So, Dimitri, if I understand you right, you said that our decision we would need to consider the development agreement before we pass, I think, a decision. Did you say that?
Madam Mayor, my recommendation would be that we have our lawyers look at the development agreement to make sure the development agreement is sound. As far as I understand, you can't attach conditions to zoning amendments, right? So because we can't attach conditions to zoning amendments, we'll need to consider the development agreement part and parcel with the zoning amendment. So what that means is the next step of this process would be to consider all the comments raised here. And then if the applicants still want to move forward, we'll need to draft up a development agreement and have our lawyers review that. And then it's ultimately will be council that will approve a development agreement. If you recall back to a recent development agreement we just signed with another property, it came to council and you all voted on that agreement. So it's the same process, except that was conditional. That was a condition of a minor variance application. We can't attach conditions to zoning amendments, so we have to bring these two pieces together to council. So then you'll vote on both of those items at the same time.
So to Mr. Demore's point, the development agreement should include some sort of a penalty or enforcement clause, is that?
That's not for me to say, it will be up to the township lawyers to advise the township.
And when could we see this next? Obviously, this applicant wants to move fairly quickly, right? When would we see this coming forward as a next step?
I can't give a specific date, most likely not the next council meeting, but the one after that, because if the applicant wants to continue moving forward, and if there is a development agreement that's actually proposed, we will need that development agreement to be vetted by legal counsel. Because illegal counsel is done by a different agency, I don't know what their timing is gonna be like. It's usually a couple of weeks to turn around at minimum for first comments.
So apologies if I'm repeating myself here. So your recommendation, if that's the right term, is we don't, as council, we don't proceed until we see a development agreement for review. Is that?
My recommendation is yes, because if you decide to proceed without a development agreement, there's no mechanism for you to require a development agreement.
Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Holton?
No, I think I'm pretty sure there's not a subdivision plan that is registered. Nobody's been able to find it, so it probably isn't. That's the only question. Sometimes a lot of subdivision plans will spell out some more things. That was my only question. The other thing, there's a couple things for us to consider, but one has been brought up. It's outside our purview, like M&R will handle it or. So we only have two things to just consider.
Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I just want to provide comments on the plan of subdivision. So the plan of, like, the properties were created through a plan of subdivision, meaning that there is a plan that is called a plan of subdivision at the land registry office that shows these lots as being part of that subdivision. But subdivisions have two components to them. You have your plan, your map, and then you have your subdivision agreement. And that subdivision agreement spells out responsibilities for road maintenance, for, various different things that typically bind property owners and the township to a specific type of agreement. I'm not saying that there's no subdivision plan. We just don't have a copy of the subdivision agreement. So, and the subdivision agreement issue has been a point of contention for other issues. And when there was another inquiry that we were looking at on another property on Spithead Road about a year or so ago. And as part of that process, the applicant's lawyer was trying to do due diligence to try and find a copy of the subdivision agreement, and they were unable to locate it. So subdivision agreement is not in township records, not in any records that we have access to. So we don't know where that agreement is.
During that time frame, it was cited 1947. And then Dr. Bill Gent, I believe, was involved in that in the past. Howe Island was not part of Frontenac Islands. It would have been under the Leeds area, correct? Again, Knockaway technically?
I don't know the history exactly. I just know that if there was an agreement, it probably would have traveled across 3 or 4 different offices since it was first approved.
But I would have expected.
The subdivisions in those days were not approved by the township. They were approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, or Ministry of Municipal Affairs at that time.
Okay, so has anybody checked as Ministry of Municipal Affairs?
For other issues in the past, they have, and MMAH does not have a record of that agreement.
Okay, good to know then. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Delon.
Thanks, Mayor. I've heard enough of the opinions here. I've got my information. I'll wait to have our in-depth conversation next time.
Yeah, okay. And yes, I think we've had a lot of great information brought forward and lots to consider, and I look forward to a more detailed report. And I do agree that the key piece is our bylaw on that, not only having a primary residence there, but also the height change. That's something that we will take into consideration, because at this point in time, planning hasn't even provided a recommendation to us because this is an information session. So realistically, you're saying it'll be April before we get a copy of a more fulsome report and recommendation and copy of the development plan, if that's the proposal?
It would be my best guess. I mean, depending on how quickly things are turned around, there may be the March meeting, but we're cutting it very, very close. I think April is our best bet. I don't even think that we'd be able to put a report for next Monday, quite frankly.
So we're in a short month.
Yeah, so I think April meeting is probably the best,
Okay.
the best guess for at earliest, in terms of earliest meeting.
Okay, and then realistically, it would be fall before too much would occur because they're looking at getting M&R, they have to have engineers. I didn't hear that there's any engineers already involved in this project, and certainly on the water.
I can't comment on the applicant's timelines as far as when they're gonna do all the work in the ground. Yeah, my focus is on zoning and planning both.
Councillor Ackland.
Well, the bottom line is they can't build anything without M&R saying they can. Whatever, even if we pulled a motion today, voted in the past, they still can't build. Till M&R says yes, correct? So that would be in our plans that they couldn't move forward if we did.
And we can't make an informed decision until we get enough information.
Well, I'm pretty sure we have an informed information. We got enough drawings, pieces, papers, setbacks. We've got Cataract Way's comments. We have some comments from M&R. We have comments from Dimitri. So far I see everything out here, except for, I'm pretty sure these people have paid money to have this move forward because of the fishing and spawning, stuff like that at a certain time. So they should be allowed what they've asked for.
No, we're past the
Okay.
comments.
I just want to know what your personal investment is.
There's no personal investment.
Anyways, no, we're after the comments section, so,
I have no
Yes.
personal investment.
I have a motion in.
no, we're not gonna entertain a motion to
No, it's to receive the planning.
receive. Okay, thank you very much.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Holton, that council receive the planning report for information purposes, and that planning staff will review comments and provide a detailed analysis and recommendation to council in the final report at a future meeting date.
Okay. All right, and first, that's moved and seconded by,
Moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Holton.
okay, any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Now, thank you very much. Now we're at the request for priority boarding.
Yeah, well, wait.
Please step out if you could, please. You haven't ended the meeting.
Get everyone to leave where we want.
Our meeting is not adjourned.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for your time.
Take care.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. There, otherwise.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Rice, if I may ask you if I can just carry on your conversation outside?
Right.
Thank you.
My wife, Shandy.
I know.
Okay. Okay, now on the agenda, we had another. Step out, please. Step out. The meeting is continuing. Okay. Okay. We have an action item. Request for priority boarding for the Wolf Island Ferry regarding medical supplies. I had a brief discussion with the clerk ahead of time.
So if I may, Madam Mayor, this request actually came through, MTO, from Ms. Donaldson. I don't have an actual request from any of the Ontario Medical Supply, drivers. So, if council wishes to defer this to the March 9th meeting, I can reach out to the Ontario Medical Supply, company and request an official priority boarding request that council can consider at the March 9th meeting.
Okay, and the only thing I'll add to that is I've heard from a resident that depends on this service, who made the point that the driver basically was stopped and it is an inordinate delay for it. So I'm certainly not opposed to it one way or the other in that, because we're lucky to get anybody coming over in that to bring medical supplies to keep the people happy. It's unusual that it would be done at a public meeting was my key question. And you said that it could be done in
It
public.
can be dealt with, like I just want to kind of give a little bit of background that, the request actually came from the Ministry of Transportation as opposed to Ontario Medical Supply. So, if council, so wishes, I have no problem reaching out to the Ontario Medical Supply, company, requesting an official, request to go to the March 9th council meeting.
Okay, Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What makes this request different than other requests we had for priority boarding?
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically, the request actually comes from, I'm gonna say like Pikeview Farms, or Bloom Farms or something like that. It actually comes from the individual that it's impacting as opposed to, Ministry of Transportation itself, because someone's requested it through one of the death cancer dog workers.
So what is this, what are these folks delivering? Is it critical?
If I may, Madam Mayor, I believe it's like your regular medical supplies. I'm not sure if it would be like, maybe you can help out. I'm not sure.
It could be CBI bags for somebody that's undergoing dialysis. And that some people do continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis, some have ulcers and things of that nature, some have incontinence pads and things of that nature and that, so it gets delivered off. If you have IV, we were in receipt of many of that when my husband was dying, and that many IV deliveries before any care would arrive into the house, so that's what it's about. Councillor Hall.
I guess we're only 2 weeks away. We can get a lot of those questions answered if we reach out to the company, so I'm fine with waiting, or I'm fine with going ahead. I mean, we need the medical supplies, but we're being that we're only a couple weeks out from the meeting, I'm fine if we go ahead and wait.
Okay, Councillor Jablonski.
I was gonna play a devil's advocate and say, actually, this to me is a requirement, that's mandatory. I'd vote on it right now and give them access to it. It's required.
Yeah, I'm inclined the same way in that, because we may end up with different companies that end up supplying different things that are medical supplies. And the fact that MTO is raising it means that they've had discussions with drivers. It would have been, they just didn't come out of the blue.
No.
So I don't have a problem with it either, and that to be a blanket, and that I know it's problematic even for the special nurses that do come over for starting IVs, SWs, it's always been problematic, and it's always been more or less a nod of discretion. You put out your sign saying PSW and that, and they try to accommodate.
I do have a motion if
Okay.
council would.
Yep.
Moved by Councillor Halton, second by Councillor Jablonski, that the request received from the drivers for the Ontario Medical Supply regarding priority boarding for their drivers on the Wolf Islander Ferry, brackets, could be up to 20 drivers, not all at one time, be supported to ensure year-round access for the delivery of supplies to patients on Wolf Island, and that staff provide a letter to the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario supporting this request.
Moved and seconded by
Moved by Counselor Halton, second by Counselor Chwan.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carry. Thank you. Okay, now we're at the bylaws for bylaw 012-26 confirmatory bylaw.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, second by Counselor Jablonski, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw 012-2026, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Jablonski, second by Counselor Ackley, that the public meeting held February 23rd, 2026 adjourns.
At 11:49. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Carried. Thank you very much.